Today we're looking at inherited diseases. In particular, we want to focus on polydactyly and we want to focus on another disease called cystic fibrosis. They're both considered to be congenital, and congenital means you're born with it. So our objective is simple: how the human genetic disorders polydactyly and cystic fibrosis are inherited. Polydactyly is just where you have an extra digit. You can have an extra finger or an extra toe. Look a little bit like that. Some people get it removed, but others decide to just live with it. I mean, when is more fingers not better than less fingers? But what's actually unusual about polydactyly is that it's inherited by a dominant allele. Now, in the book that goes with this course, you'll see that they've chosen to use the letter P to represent polydactyly. I'm not in line with that. I don't think it's a great idea, because when you start doing your genetic cross, you're going to lose track of which is your uppercase P and which is your lowercase p. I've chosen to use a D because there is a clear distinction between the uppercase, which is our dominant, and the lowercase, which is our recessive. So setting out our diagram correctly, we need to show that big D is our polydactyly condition and the small d is for normal. Our phenotype, we're going to have a polydactyly person. In other words, they would have the extra digit, so they know that because it's a dominant allele. And imagine they're marrying a normal individual who doesn't have an extra digit. So their genotype in this case for the polydactyly person is big D, little d. They've got one allele that carries the polydactyly mutation, and they've got a normal one. They could be big D, but they're not in this case. They are heterozygous. And they have married and decided to have children with somebody who is normal, therefore they have the two recessive genes. They are homozygous recessive. So the person with polydactyly, the extra digit, can make a gamete, a sperm or an egg, with a big D or with a little d. Whereas the normal person can only make a sperm or an egg with the small d allele or the small d allele. So when we put them together in a genetic diagram, let's see what we get. So here we have our cross, big D, little d, so that is our polydactyly person. You would know that you had married somebody with this allele because it would be expressed, because it's the dominant allele, and then you've got your normal person here. So we've got a heterozygous versus a homozygous recessive cross, and that's going to give us a 50-50 chance that our children would also inherit the polydactyl allele. So if you'd married somebody with an extra digit and half of your children had the extra digit and half didn't, you could rest assured that your husband was heterozygous or your wife was heterozygous for that condition. However, if they are homozygous, then all your children are going to have an extra digit. Let's look at how that works out. So we've got our phenotype here, polydactyly versus normal. That's what we had before. But in this case, the genotype is homozygous dominant, okay? And we've got a homozygous recessive there. So the only allele that our polydactyly person can pass on is the allele that carries the condition. Either the sperm or the eggs, whether it's mum or dad, are going to give all their gametes with the allele for polydactyl in it. So when we look at the cross here, we've got our polydactyly person and our normal, and all of the offspring carry the dominant polydactyl allele, and therefore it will be expressed in the phenotype of all of them. Cystic fibrosis is another congenital condition. It's passed on from one generation to the next. And actually, more people carry the recessive allele than you would think. However, it's only normally expressed when both parents have passed that allele on. In other words, if both parents are carriers. And even then, it's just down to chance. It's a 1 in 4 chance. This is another way you'll often see genetics expressed. So this is the cystic fibrosis allele, and we've got an unaffected carrier father. He's got the unaffected allele, which is big R in this case. See how they've chosen an uppercase to represent the dominant and a lowercase letter that is different from the uppercase to represent the recessive. So he is a heterozygous, big R, little r, and he doesn't have cystic fibrosis. He might not even have it in his family. He might be unaware of what the condition even is. And he's got his wife, and she's exactly the same. She might not have it in her family. She doesn't know she is a carrier of the allele. When they have the children, well, if dad's sperm there joins up with mum's egg there, then they get an unaffected child. If dad's sperm there joins up with mum's sperm there, again, they get a carrier. And likewise, the same happens there. So there's actually only a 1 in 4 chance. Now, I'm not a fan of these type of diagrams. I like to use a Punnett Square. So I'm just going to draw that out on the board. Stick with their letters because I thought they were quite good. We're going to say let R equal normal and R equal cystic fibrosis. So you'll see that this is different straight away from the polydactyly because it's the recessive gene, it's the recessive allele of the gene that is carrying the condition. So we're going to say that the phenotype was normal times normal, both mum and dad, perfectly normal, no problem. But the genotype, we said they were carriers, so we're going to have big R, little r times big R, little r. Both of them were carriers. And so the gametes that they can produce are either big R, little r. Again, I'm circling them to show the discrete nature, to show that they are gametes. That's what the exam board wants, even though the book doesn't do it. Times by a big R and a little r. And if we put them into a genetic cross, I'm just working small here now so that we can keep it within camera shot. We've got a heterozygous versus a heterozygous, and we're going to have a 3-to-1 ratio. In other words, we're going to have a 1 in 4 chance of the offspring inheriting both alleles for the condition. Let's just do a little bit of background about how cystic fibrosis causes that terrible condition that people live with. Not that many years ago, your life expectancy was really shortened if you had cystic fibrosis, but due to new drugs and treatment, physiotherapy, people can live a fairly normal life. What happens is in some of the tubes, it might be the sperm duct, it might be in the trachea, it might be in the pancreatic duct, they get clogged up with mucus. And the reason why is because normally, if this was the lumen of any tube, and these were the cells on the outside of it, whichever tube we're deciding to look at, there's a pump in the membrane. And the pump is, of course, made of protein. And what happens is the pump pumps chloride ions out into this mucus, which lines here, and normally, because of osmosis, water follows. And because that water follows, it makes the mucus really runny. Without that pump working properly, why? Because there's been a mutation in the DNA, so it's not coded properly for the protein, which means that the amino acids that make the protein don't fold correctly and become non-functional. So when you've got that mutation, you don't pump out enough of the chloride ions. So the water doesn't follow and your mucus becomes really thick and really sticky and it builds up. And so that's why it causes so many problems, because remember, your pancreas releases digestive enzymes into your gut. They get blocked. So you have to take tablets with enzymes in them to put the enzymes into your gut. And also your respiratory passages become blocked, and that can be quite distressing if you're not able to breathe. And so physical massage and physical therapy can help to sort that out also. Now in the UK, 1 in 25 people are carriers for the cystic fibrosis gene, and many of them will never become aware of it. It depends who you marry, and even then, even if you marry and you decide to have children with a carrier, then there is still only a 1 in 4 chance that your child will get cystic fibrosis. Let's look at how this could be represented on a family tree. This is an old AQA question. It says CADASIL is an inherited disorder caused by a dominant allele. CADASIL leads to weakening of blood vessels in the brain. The diagram shows the inheritance of CADASIL in one family. And with the question comes a key which shows us the male and the female, and it shows us with or without CADASIL. So as I reread the question again, I can see that an important piece of information is that it is caused by a dominant allele. So I'm going to underline that. And we don't know whether adult 1 or 2 is heterozygous for the condition or homozygous. So we have to look to their offspring. We can see there that there are 2 individuals, number 5 and number 6, who don't have the disorder. However, number 7 does. Individuals number 5 and number 6 received a recessive allele from mum and a recessive allele from dad. So that means that adults number 1 and number 2 must both be heterozygous for the condition. So I'm going to label those big D, little d. Through trial and error, I'm going to work out if number 7 is big D, big D. If individual 7 was big D, then the only sperm he could produce would contain the allele big D. However, individuals 10, 11 and 12 do not have the disorder. They do not have the big D allele. So what they've actually inherited from their parent, their father, individual number 7, is the small d. I'm going to go back to the diagram and I'm going to adjust it. I'm going to cross that big D out and replace it with big D, small d. And I'm just going to circle the 2 Ds that were passed on to individuals at 10, 11 and 12.